I found 3 terrifying true stories about what lurked outside my window. I never should have opened that door. The air was thick with dread as I stood there, hand trembling, hovering over the doorknob. I was just a regular kid, lost in my day-to-day routine, unaware of the nightmares waiting just outside them. My room was dim and cold, shadows dancing against the walls, whispers echoing softly like the breath of lost souls. Outside, a tempest lurked. I often peered through the window, convinced the world beyond was innocent. But there was something darker at play. One night, I saw a pair of glowing eyes watching from the darkened trees. My heart raced. It was unmistakable, something there wasn't right. The stillness pressed against my chest, the air electric with tension. Was it my imagination, or was there a form slinking deeper into the shadows? I could almost hear its heartbeat. The next evening, the whispers turned into words. I could swear I heard my name, soft and haunting, beckoning me into the night. I gripped the window frame, cold against my palms, chills running down my spine. I told myself it was just the wind, but the persistent tug in my gut said otherwise. Then came the moment, a flash of darkness, darting just out of sight. I gasped, retreating into the corner of my room. My mind raced. What if I wasn't alone? What if what lurked outside was searching for me? My breath came in quick bursts, the walls feeling like they were closing in. The shadows inside my room felt alive, stretching toward me, as if they wanted to envelop me. I turned away, trying to silence the terror brewing inside me. And then, there it was, heavy footsteps pounding against the ground, approaching. A sound so close, so primal, it sent ice through my veins that I was paralyzed, my heart slamming against my ribcage. As the footsteps drew near, a chill swept through the air. The door rattled, a gentle but ominous shake. I had to know, what was on the other side? Should I turn the handle? Should I just wait? I stood there, trapped between curiosity and sheer horror, when suddenly the door swung open. My breath caught. There stood a shadowy figure, dark against the dim light, a distorted grin spreading across its face. I felt the room grow silent, the air thickening with dread. And then there was a scream. Not mine. A sudden, shrill cry that shattered the silence, echoing into nothing. What had I unleashed? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scream lingered in the air as I stood frozen, my heart hammering wildly in my chest. The figure in the doorway was a jigsaw of shadows, limbs elongated and twisted, as if molded from the very darkness that engulfed my room. My mind scrambled, grasping for a shred of reality amidst the chaos. What are you? I stammered, choking on the words as the creature lurched forward, its smile stretching impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glistened like broken glass. The room trembled, and suddenly, the walls seemed to breathe with me, pulsating as though the house itself was alive and aware, eager to envelop this new presence. I could feel a surge of icy air sweep through the doorway, wrapping around my legs like tendrils of fog. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. Instead, I stood, entranced by its malevolence. Well, hello there, the figure rasped, its voice a chilling echo of 1,000 whispers. It leaned closer, and I felt the temperature drop. Each breath I took turned to mist in the frigid air. It's been so long since someone opened that door. With those words, a surge of guttural growls erupted from the depths of the shadow, vibrating through my very bones. They felt ancient, as though they belonged to another realm where nightmares roamed free. Backing away instinctively, I stumbled into the corner of my room, my back pressing against the cool wall, a feeble barrier against the terror drawing nearer. What do you want? I managed to utter, surprise mingling with fear. The creature tilted its head, eyes radiating a sickly green glow that pierced through the darkness like twin lanterns. "The same as all those before you," it crooned, each word dripping with malice. "I want to play." My mind screamed for logic, darting to escape this malevolence, yet I felt rooted in place, the weight of its gaze pinning me down. The air shimmered again, and I could see the outlines of faces twisted in agony swirling within its form-lost souls, perhaps, trapped eternally in a game. "Yes, play. You opened the door, didn't you? You let me in." It stretched its fingers long, twisted nails scraping against the doorframe. "Now, let's see how far this game can go." Suddenly, the door behind me slammed shut with a thunderous crash, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through my veins as I clawed at the wall, feeling the texture shift into something flesh-like, pulsating beneath my fingertips. Shadows deepened, elongating around me, merging with the creature's encroaching presence. "Remember, dear child," it sneered, its features distorting in the dimness. "You've always been part of this. Once the door is opened, there's no escaping the game." A cacophony of tortured whispers flooded my ears. Images of previous players flashed in my mind, their faces twisted in horror, begging for release from this malevolent grasp. I felt the overwhelming urge to surrender, to give in to the darkness that beckoned with promises of safety and solace. Then came the shrill laughter, echoing through the confines of my mind, consuming every ounce of hope. In the distance, beyond the walls that seemed to close in, the tempest roared back to life, unleashing a fury against the house as if it too was part of the malignant tapestry. Before I could comprehend the shift in the air, darkness engulfed me, heavy and suffocating. I gasped for breath, feeling the weight of 1,000 icy fingers curling around my throat. The creature's breath was on my face now, rancid and sweet, and I could see the flickering of a wide, hungry smile. "Your turn to play begins now," it hissed, and I felt the ground shift beneath me as the walls contorted, twisting into a spiraling void. Just when the laughter grew deafening, the world shattered like glass. That I found myself standing in a vast expanse of swirling mist, suspended in nothingness. However, I wasn't alone. Specters of other children, their eyes wide with terror, circled around me, trapped in a haunting echo of their last moments. Faces I recognized but couldn't quite place. "Help us," one of them pleaded, its voice a mere thread lost in the whirlwind of despair, but the shadows lurked just beyond, waiting for me to take a step. All I had to do was choose. Would I join the dance of the doomed or find a way back to the world I once knew? Suddenly, the laughter erupted anew, reverberating through the void, growing closer, and filled with manic glee. I turned to face the approaching darkness, my heart racing. And then, I realized I was no longer standing. I was falling. Falling into the abyss, into the void where every face glimmered for a moment before vanishing into the dark. The creature's laughter echoed around me, taunting me with a promise I could soon forget, or, worse yet, never escape. And then I landed, not with a thud but with a sickening silence. My body sprawled across a familiar landscape, one I had hoped never to see again. But this time, I wasn't alone. The figure stood before me, grinning. "You're back in the game," it whispered, and the shadows swarmed, eager to welcome their next player. I was going to break free, but with every ounce of fear I felt, I realized I had already lost. And the shadows whispered my name again, now with a sinister familiarity. The ground beneath me quaked as I lay motionless, the specters surrounding me whispering desperately, their gaunt faces illuminated by the faint, eerie glow of a nearby moon. Panic clawed at my throat as the figure's silhouette danced in the periphery, a grotesque marionette made of darkness, looking ever more familiar. "Welcome back," it crooned, stepping closer, each step sending tremors through the earth. "You've returned, and the game is so much better this time." The air hummed with anticipation, punctuated by distant wails that echoed through the vastness around us. I struggled to rise, to escape this purgatory of torment and despair, yet every twitch of my body felt weighted by an unseen force. Searing dread settled in my gut as I saw their eyes, those of the children, bursting with panic and unfulfilled hope. One child, a girl with pigtails stained in ash, reached out to me. "You have to help us. We're trapped here. You can't play by their rules." Her voice, though soft, carried an urgency that thrummed inside me. Play. Aren't you all dead? I gurgled, sharing a moment of raw fear with the spectre. As if on cue, a chorus of laughter skittered through the air, chilling and mocking. Dead? Yes, but the game goes on, and the living are drawn into it like moths to a flame. The figure leaned down, its eyes piercing through me like shards of ice. You see, once the door is opened, it's not the players that choose the game's rules, it's the game that chooses them. Swirling shadows morphed around us, drawing in closer, pulsing like a beating heart. My mind raced, each thought a gasping plea for escape. Yet, even as I squirmed, unseen hands grasped at my ankles, dragging me toward the abyss from which I had just emerged. No. I cried, desperation fueling my attempt to break free. I want play. Ah, but you already have, the figure said, its laughter rising to a fever pitch. You were foolish enough to open the portal. You invited me, welcomed me into your reality. Now, the only option is to play until every one of us dances for eternity. The pressure increased as the shadows began to envelop me, their whispers melding into a cacophony of anguished cries. The faces of the children transformed into shades of agony, imploring me with their wide, pleading eyes as they too were gradually consumed. With newfound resolve, I forced my limbs to move. I stumbled, dragging myself away from the wraith-like grasp of the shadows, my breath ragged. The moon hung low, casting a pale light that revealed a path through the fog. Don't leave us! The girl shrieked, her voice cracking and fading as I fought against the darkness wrapping around my wrists. That I can't help you if I'm trapped. I screamed back, each word a plea for life and freedom amid the relentless pull of despair. As I clawed my way toward that ephemeral path, I stumbled upon a familiar sight, a door, standing alone amidst the void, just as it had in my room. This door was adorned with deep crimson runes that pulsed ominously, emanating a warmth that beckoned me closer. My heart thundered with both fear and hope. Was this my exit or another false gate into madness? The figure appeared before me, blocking my way. Oh, child, don't you want to know what lies beyond? It hissed, a flicker of interest dancing in its malevolent gaze. What happens when you choose to escape? Memories flooded my mind, glimmers of moments shared with those I loved danced just beyond my reach, powerful reminders of life outside this horror. I couldn't let the darkness consume Menet when there was still a chance to reclaim my reality. Stay back! I shouted, voice firm with defiance. Game or not, I am more than just a pawn. The shadows writhed in response, threatening to overwhelm me. The laughter grew fevered, rising to a thunderous crescendo, its vibrations echoing in my bones as if the entire universe was collapsing around us. With one last desperate lunge, I hurled myself toward the door, the air electrified by my will to escape. The shadows clawed at me, ripping at my clothes, pulling me back with insatiable hunger as if the game suddenly hinged on my next choice. Then, just as my fingertips grazed the door, I heard Ida's voice emerging from the depths of the darkness, drowned in a malevolent whisper. Choose wisely, for what lies beyond shall change everything, including you. And as I threw the door open, a rush of freezing wind screamed out fiercely, enveloping me in a blinding light. I felt myself being pulled, ripped apart, as the shadows shrieked my name, their fury reverberating through my very essence. That I had no idea what awaited me on the other side. But as the light consumed me wholly, the last thing I witnessed was a darkness that seemed to laugh, echoing my fate. And then, silence. Cold air seeped into my lungs, biting at my chest as I emerged from the blinding light. The familiar weight of dread turned to a heightened sense of alertness. I was no longer in the realm of shadows, but a desolate street illuminated by sickly street lamps. The silence was all-consuming, an ominous stillness that devoured even the faintest sounds of life. I drew in a shaky breath, trying to quell the rising panic that clawed at my mind. My heart sank as I realized I recognized this place. It was the street just outside my childhood home, the street I had fled from when the haunting visions grew too vivid. Twisted memories surged forward like a violent tide. I could almost hear echoes of laughter from friends who once played here before everything fell apart, yet as I ventured further, a deep chill crept through my bones. Shadows pooled at the base of the street lamps, flickering like insects caught in a trap of light. I marched on, fighting the urge to turn back. An unshakable sensation prickled at my back, the feeling of being watched, a weighty gaze that made my skin crawl that I veered down the path that led to my old house, each step heavy with foreboding. As I approached, the front door stood ajar, swaying gently in a phantom breeze, beckoning like a malignant siren. Doubt seized my thoughts. Should I enter this derelict shell of a home that harbored my darkest fears? A creak of old floorboards was audible as I stepped over the threshold. The house was dark, cloaked in an unnatural twilight. As I moved further in, the familiar sense of dust and decay wrapped around me like a vile embrace. Childlike laughter resonated through the halls, bubbling from the past yet laced with an eerie distortion. Each step echoed with the memories of laughter, blended with an undercurrent of sorrow. I ventured into the living room, where the wallpaper peeled like the skin of a forgotten memory. Torn photographs littered the floor, showing faces obscured by eyes that seemed to watch me regardless of their chosen lens. I could barely make out receding silhouettes, each image warped in grotesque expressions of terror. Do you want to play? A whisper drifted from the darkness, carrying an echo of the nightmarish laughter that had taunted me before. My pulse quickened, a rhythmic drumbeat of dread reverberating through me. Who's there? I shouted, summoning whatever remnants of bravery I could muster. The response came swift, an agonizing groan slinking through the walls, as though the very structure of the house was a malignant entity hungry for my fear. Suddenly, the room flickered to life as if ignited by an unseen flash. The shadows coalesced into forms, the very entities I had fled and forsaken. Frightened children with haunted eyes, their mouths sewn shut as if silenced by an unspeakable truth. They stood rooted to the spot, armfuls of old toys strewn around them like the remnants of joy. Turned detritus. One of the children, a boy with hollow cheeks, pointed toward the dimly lit staircase. It's up there, you need to find the truth, he mouthed, though no sound accompanied the frantic gesture, as if he were a coded message trapped in a game I never wanted to play. My body betrayed me as I turned toward the insatiable gloom creeping up the stairs. I had to know what truth. I whispered, barely audible, praying the shadows would provide a morsel of clarity. As I ascended the staircase, the atmosphere thickened, binding my feet to each step with the invisible chains of dread. The whispers grew louder, the unseen forces pushing me upward as memories I had long buried clawed at the edges of my mind. I reached the top and found a door, just like the portal from before, but this one was battered and splintered, the wood darkened with age and grime. Compelled to grasp the handle, I hesitated just for a moment. Something lies beyond, I murmured, recalling the figure's taunts. What if this was the last remnant before the finality of madness? Yet, I could not turn back. With shaking hands, I turned the handle and pulled the door open, my heart a frenzied drum. The light that spilled through was not warm but cold as ice, a blinding flash that threatened to swallow me whole. I braced myself, ready to confront whatever horrors awaited on the other side. That's when the laughter returned, not distant, but right beside me, echoing in the narrow hall, engulfing me. It was no longer just a whisper, it was a corrosive cacophony of gleeful, sinister voices, foreshadowing the depths of despair that awaited. Just as the shadows writhed around me, a hand reached through from the other side and grasped my wrist, cold as death. As I screamed, the laughter crescendoed, drowning out my voice, suffocating me in layers of darkness. My vision blurred, my heart thundered violently. There was no turning back now. An unearthly presence began to spill into reality, and I could feel time unravel around me, twisting and bending. Welcome to the true game, it hissed, the shadows curling like smoke around my feet, pulling me toward an inescapable fate. And then, suddenly, the laughter ceased. I found myself face to face with myself. My mirrored twin grinned back at me, eyes filled with endless night and a knowing malice, just as shattering as the mystery I had been trying to evade. Care to play? It taunted, and just like that, the ground gave way beneath me. The descent felt eternal, my body swallowed by darkness as I plummeted into an abyss. I braced for impact, though I knew in my gut that I would never truly hit the ground. Instead, I found myself suspended in the cold grip of nothingness, teetering on the precipice of dread. It was then that the laughter returned, echoing around me like a malicious wind, mocking my every heartbeat. That a sudden jolt snapped me from the void, depositing me into a new realm, a room, heavily cloaked in shadows. Dim light trickled in through cracks in the boarded windows, creating jagged patterns that danced across the walls like frenetic spirits. The oppressive scent of mildew intermingled with something else, something metallic and stale, stirring at the back of my mind as if I were threading dangerously close to the dreadful truth. "Where are you?" I whispered, my voice barely reaching past the gloom. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, darting in and out of the fading light. I felt eyes upon me, countless presences watching, their breath practically tickling my neck, coaxing me into despair. As I stepped further into the room, I noticed something on the floor, an array of small, child-sized shoes scattered carelessly, their worn leather crumpled from years of abandonment. I bent down, the stench of decay intensifying, and I picked up a shoe, its surface still marred with the details of little hands once tying their laces. Turning it over, a name scratched awkwardly into the sole sent chills down my spine: Olivia. Olivia. I called out, the sound hollow against the oppressive silence that enveloped me. My heart raced as adrenaline coursed through me, accompanied by a pulse of anxious hope. But before I could gather my thoughts, whispers slithered from unseen mouths, curling around my legs like tendrils of fog. "Leave her," they chanted, their voices an unearthly chorus layered beneath my own sense of rising dread. I wanted to obey, to flee this hideous nightmare, but something anchored me there. Some dark compulsion kept my feet rooted to the spot. That a creak resonated through the room, pulling my attention towards thicker shadows that seethed toward a corner. Underneath a filthy old sheet, I noticed a lump forming. The fabric billowed slightly, disturbed by an unseen force, as if whatever lay beneath it was struggling to contain itself. Gritting my teeth, I staggered toward the corner, each step feeling heavier under the weight of expectation. With trembling hands, I peeled back the sheet. The sight that met my eyes was suffocating, a tangle of hair and limbs, all too familiar. There lay Olivia, or the remnants of what had been her essence. Her face was a twisted mask of sorrow, eyes wide and glassy, as if trapped in eternal torment. My chest constricted with a wash of despair while a scream clawed its way up my throat but refused to escape. Suddenly, the laughter erupted around me, louder, darker, intertwined with Olivia's silent wails. In an instant, the shadows morphed, and the figures of children surrounded me. I was no longer merely an observer but a part of something grotesque and sinister, a participant in a game I had never agreed to play. They reached for me with gnarled fingers, their mouths moving in silent screams of longing, urging me to join them. "Help us!" came a cacophony of voices, their pleas piercing through the dark. Each child was a fragment of an unending torment, sewn together by secrets that should have rotted in the ground but instead festered here, in this godforsaken room. From the corner of my eye, I glimpsed a dark figure emerging behind Olivia, grotesque caricature, towering in stature, its body twisted like an ancient tree. Shadows coiled around its form, obscuring its true appearance, yet something about its presence sent a primal fear coursing through my veins. "You'll never leave," it rasped, throat constricted with malice. It pointed a finger at me, skeletal and dark, a menacing limb that promised nothing but unending suffering. "Why?" I gasped, feeling the ground shift beneath me, unable to comprehend the pit beneath my feet. Opening wider. The children looked at me with hollow eyes, pleading for liberation that I could not give. The air became thick, charged with dread, sweat beading on my brow, as I attempted to step back. But an invisible force grasped my chest, squeezing tight. The familiar pull of darkness wrapped around me like a shroud, drawing me nearer to the grotesque entity and Olivia's frozen form. "Find the truth," it hissed, and as if a dam broke, visions flooded my mind, past, present, and future intermingling into a chaotic tapestry woven with despair. Memories of lives stolen echoed in a whirlwind, knitting a connection to every child lyingly entrapped in the shadows. Just as I felt myself teetering toward insanity, a shriek pierced through the suffocating darkness. "Run!" The children screamed in unison, their chorus fraying at the edges of my consciousness. But as I spun to flee, the sheets billowed again, and icy fingers wrapped around my ankle, anchoring me in place as the darkness surged forth. In that instant, I knew I was no longer in control. I was merely a host to the horrors long buried in this wretched place, and as despair closed in, a single truth echoed in my ears: there was no escape. I would become part of their game. The walls themselves began to close in, pressing against me, warping into a grotesque mouth intent on swallowing me whole. And amid the chaos, Olivia's gaze met mine one last time, pleading silently as the shadows consumed me. A sudden jolt of realization erupted within my mind: this isn't over. I screamed, panicking, but my voice was lost. My heart raced, every cell in my body screaming as I clawed at the shadows, desperate for recourse. But as the entity's grip tightened, and whispers clawed at the fabric of my soul, I felt darkness pull me down, deeper than before, and then silenced at I in the darkness, I floated, bound by the echoes of my choices, and a simple whisper emerged from the void, reverberating ominously in the depths of my mind: welcome to the game of your life. And you've already lost. The air felt heavy, thick with secrets and madness as I drifted deeper into the void, my senses dulled by fear. The darkness pulsated around me, throbbing with confused whispers that twisted and turned like smoke, whispering incoherent threats and promises that mingled into a singular, haunting refrain: you belong to us now. That I tried to scream, tried to fight against the grip that held me hostage, but my voice was smothered by the oppressive weight of despair. Every muscle in my body screamed for release, yet the shadows pulsed with fevered delight, wrapped tight around me, suffocating my screams in the womb of this unseen terror. Then, a flash of memory struck me, fragments of laughter echoing through sunlit hallways, the warmth of friendship wrapped in innocence, a ghost of normalcy I yearned to grasp. But those images quickly distorted, giving way to vivid scenes marred by fear. I saw Olivia again, her eyes wide and pleading, and the grotesque entity loomed near, its laughter a splintered tune contaminating the blissful moments. Will you choose to remember? It rasped, its voice like crumbling leaves, each word a jagged shard slicing through my mind. A cruel game unfolded around me, shadows materializing like puppets on strings. They formed a tapestry of human suffering, stitching their cries across the fabric of time. Each child represented a story, and at its core, a truth hidden behind locks and forgotten corners. That a shimmering haze melted the firm grip of darkness around me, and I was thrust into imagery far sharper than before. I stood barely a breath away from a house long abandoned. The weathered facade crumbled beneath the weight of memories, yet vibrant echoes of laughter swirled through the air. I could hear children playing, their glee intertwining with the rustle of wind through cracked windows. But then, that laughter turned grotesque, spiraling into despair as the scene darkened. Through the most broken window, a figure beckoned to me, its silhouette poised in haunting stillness. I followed against my better judgment, heart pounding as I crossed the threshold into that shattered sanctuary. The instant I stepped inside, the door slammed behind me with a deafening crash, throwing me into a world of shadows and forgotten dreams. Every wall held the residue of lives once lived, chilling remnants that whispered secrets too terrible to bear. I gathered the courage to explore, moving from room to room, each holding a reflection of horror that tethered me to the anguish of a past I didn't understand. That I in the kitchen, a table was set as if waiting for an unseen family to gather. Cracked plates littered the surface, remnants of meals long since decayed. But it was the children's drawings that caught my eye. Ragged papers flapped against the walls, illustrations of children that reflected their innocence yet bled with a layer of malice, swirling with the essence of their captured souls. One drawing pulled me in, a crude depiction of a young girl, Olivia, embellished with crude red strokes and jagged marks framing her face. Bile rose in my throat, it felt alive, imbued with the essence of despair. I brushed my fingers across the paper, cold shock shooting through me as Olivia's forlorn gaze seemed to bore into me, begging for release. Suddenly, a door creaked open behind me, darkness pouring in like a predator seizing its prey. The wise wisdom of instinct screamed for me to flee, but as I turned, there stood the grotesque figure, the entity. Its twisted grin revealed rows of jagged teeth that dripped with shadows. Find them, it hissed, words laced with poison, find what they have taken from you. The shadows thickened around me, stretching and swirling with malicious intent, drawing closer, pressing down. I fought against the grip of fear, desperate to escape this horrifying reality encasing me. With every ounce of willpower, I pushed back through the shadows, surging toward the door I had entered, breathless with terror, but no matter how I struggled, the world warped around me, every shadow manifesting into dreadful silhouettes, the whispers swelling into a cacophony of demonic laughter, drowning out my gasps for life. Each step I took felt as if I were sinking through quicksand, the weight of the entity and its wicked desires pinning me down. Just when I thought I had breached the surface, something cold and wet splashed against the back of my neck. I froze, dread creeping down my spine as I felt the slickness of blood pooling beneath my feet. I turned slowly, swallowed by an awful dread, only to find the shadows had birthed forth grotesque mirrors of children, each contorted face twisted in agony, their mouths forming silent screams. Innocence lost, they cried silently, hands strewn outwards to grasp me. Yet, from within their throng, one figure stood apart, its eyes brighter than the rest. I recognized that face. Olivia, but twisted and dark, metamorphosed into something beyond understanding. Join me, she beckoned, stretched fingers trembling like leaves in a haunted wind. Together, we can break free. Before I could respond, the shadows encircled me, feeding off my anguish, and the air crackled with malice. I tried to reach for Olivia, to pull her from the throng, but as I extended my hand, the shadows closed in like a noose, sealing my fate. You've made your choice, the entity rasped, its voice bathing the room in icy glee as it reveled in our shared torment, and with that, a real truth ignited inside me, a chilling recognition of my own past, my own transgressions, swirling to the surface. What have I done? I gasped, dread coiling around my heart. The walls began to churn and spin, twisting the room into a cyclone of shadow. I glimpsed Olivia's pained expression as another voice whispered in the depths of my mind, murky and sinister, "You were never meant to leave, but you can still help her." And then the shadows surged, swallowing me whole as the ground splintered beneath my feet. As the darkness claimed me once more, the last thought that verged on breaking the surface of my consciousness was a fateful whisper: the truth lurking in the dark could come back to claim me. And then everything went black. I awoke, but not in the way one might expect. My body was enveloped by an ink-black abyss, suspended between consciousness and nightmare, limbs tingling with a numbing chill. I couldn't see, but I could feel a swarm of chaotic emotions that pulsed like a living entity, drawing my essence further into the black. As my mind slowly emerged from the depths, a horrid realization set in: I was not alone. Faint whispers threaded through the darkness, a frantic orchestra of unidentifiable voices urging me to listen. Do you hear them? They hushed, reverberating in the hollow of my chest. They're waiting for you. Waiting for you. Fear coiled tightly around my throat, choking my ability to vocalize my terror and anger. Why couldn't I move? I strained against the invisible ties binding me, every sinew throbbing with the need to escape this macabre void where shadows reigned supreme. Moments stretched imperceptibly into eons as I grappled with the echoes circling me, fragments of laughter and cries woven together into a single thread, drawing tighter. Then, just as abruptly as I had entered this abyss, light, a sickly yellow pallor flickered to life, illuminating twisted, grotesque shapes that clung to the very walls. I blinked against the brightness, eyes struggling to adjust, heart pounding as memories surged back violently, tearing me from whatever stupor I had surrendered to. I found myself in what resembled an old playground, rusting jungle gyms draped in creeping vines, painted memories peeling under layers of grime. The swings moved restlessly, creaking in a mournful tune. Long-forgotten laughter reverberated through the air like a cold wind, and I felt a distinct sense of dread wrapping around my heart. This place was familiar, yet twisted into perverse mockery of itself. I was drawn toward the merry-go-round, its surface slick with remnants of rust, brushing my fingers against it, and memories awakens like a swarm of hornets. A flash of Olivia again, her sweet, innocent laughter, once so vibrant, clouded with despair as I recalled the last time I had seen her. It was before everything had changed, before I had shut the door on the friendship that now clawed at my insides. A split second of hesitation, then a tightening knot of guilt strangled me. Had I doomed her? Be careful, a voice murmured sweetly, too close for comfort. I spun around but found no one there. They're watching you. At that moment, a cold breeze flowed through the playground, sending a violent shiver racing across my skin. The atmosphere shifted, burgeoning with the weight of unseen eyes tracking my every movement. I pressed forward, drawn inexplicably toward the shadows that jutted out from the trees like gnarled fingers, urging me further into their embrace. That as I crept deeper into this haunted realm, I knew I was trespassing on something primordial, something alive that watched and waited. The leaves rustled ominously, and I could have sworn I heard my name uttered, a soft, melodic echo layered with sorrow and rage. Help me, it beckoned. Please, I turned, battling hallucinations of innocence now intertwined with dread. Faded childhood posters lined the walls, a poster of a missing girl, eyes dazzling in a sunlit embrace, her face smeared with an otherworldly horror. I stumbled back, breath hitching, piecing together fragments, the whispers, the laughter, Olivia's eyes, images blurring, then flaring to life like a burned-out bulb suddenly revived. Behind the poster, the wall was not a wall at all, it was a doorway, slightly ajar, a rip in the fabric of reality. Compelled by invisible threads, I ventured closer, dread pooling in my stomach. The air thickened, pressing against me like a smothering shroud. What if I chose wrong? A voice screamed in the depths of my mind that I hesitated, grafted in place as a gust of wind howled through the make-believe landscape. The chorus of children's laughter escalated into a cacophony, each small voice tinged with fear. The shifts in the atmosphere stretched the frayed nerves in my body, a warning note struck in the core of my existence, but it fell on deaf ears, drowned by the dissonance nudging me through that doorway of despair. As I slipped into the darkened passage, the ground shrieked beneath me, a living entity woven into the grief of lost children. Gritting my teeth, I clutched the edge of the doorframe, the icy threshold sending horripilation through me. What lay beyond was a place painted in shades of madness. The air itself quivered, soaked in an anguish so deep I felt it resonate in my bones. Shadows danced like gowns settling too eagerly around me, and then, as if on cue, they parted to reveal a vast chamber where children trapped in distorted stasis hovered endlessly, their hollow eyes locking onto mine. Are you here to save us? One child cried, their voice cracked and desperate, as if seeking a light long extinguished. Or will you choose to let us wither? The revelations clawed at my sanity. This fortress of sorrow bore witness to horrors I couldn't comprehend, where shadows converged, staining the ephemeral fabric of childhood with darkness, and just as I opened my mouth to respond, a chilling laugh reverberated through the air, a triumphant cackle that drowned the children's pleas. The grotesque figure emerged from the shadows, its frail visage twisted into a nightmarish grin, its teeth glistening with malignant pleasure. Choose, my dear. Let them suffer, or set them free with a price of your own. That I felt the walls of reality quaking. The choice was mine, and the shadows craved fulfillment, but before I could make sense of my racing thoughts, the ground beneath me splintered once again. The children's voices rose to fever pitch, merging into a dissonant symphony of terror as the room swayed and beckoned me deeper into its hungry maw, and just then, darkness surged forth, swallowing the light, and tightened like a serpent around my throat, an unrelenting grip, dragging me down into an abyss from which I feared there would be no return. The darkness thickened around me, rendering the chamber suffocatingly claustrophobic. The cacophony of frightened cries spiraled into chaos, a mixture of despair and pleading that echoed within my skull, warping my perception of the very air I breathed. I was thrust into turmoil, buoyed on a tide of emotional anguish that surged and retreated, pulling me further into dread, but the twisted figure with its unsettling grin remained at the threshold, seemingly at ease with the anxious energy swirling before it. Its presence felt sentient, almost alive, feeding on the fear permeating the air like a fine mist. The laughter that had burst forth still reverberated in my bones, its texture a grotesque melody, and I found it nearly impossible to grasp the gravity of what was happening. Choose, it repeated, its voice soft and disarmingly laced with malice. Each word dripped with an unsettling smoothness that made my skin prickle. Would you rather return to the realm of the living where your guilt churns like a storm, or sacrifice something dear to you? A memory, perhaps? A friend? For a heartbeat, I considered the shadows that encircled the children, each soul trapped in their expressions of longing, hope, and crushing defeat. My heart turned heavy with the weight of their plight. It felt bizarrely impractical, sacrificing a shard of myself to save them, yet beneath that guise of altruism, a chilling hunger pulsed. Was it not the substance of life to choose selfishness? To survive, to live, I wanted to scream, to wrench myself from this nightmarish charade. The urge was palpable, yet I remained unable to muster a sound, my throat constricted in the grip of indecision. The cackling figure stepped forward, shadows trailing in its wake, each step resonating with a sense of impending doom. Imagine the relief that will wash over you, when the burden of your choices is lifted. All the pain gone. But it leaned closer, and in the flickering light, I caught the grotesquerie of its features: sunken cheeks, too many elongated fingers, and eyes swirling with colors that had no place in earthly realms. "You must first extract your offering." The children's breaths synchronized as they gathered around me like moths drawn to a flame, their hollow gazes desperate and imploring. If I stayed anchored in this moment, their hopes rested untethered in my hands. What was it I could give? What pieces of my very essence could I bear to relinquish? Before I could deliberate further, whispers erupted, unidentifiable voices thrumming at the edges of my consciousness. "They can't remain. Don't let them wilt like autumn leaves." Their words twisted the air and seeped like poison into my veins. I staggered, racked by flashes of my past. Images of Olivia bubbled to the surface, a cascade of what-ifs accompanied by a rancid tang of regret. "That I didn't choose you," I gasped, fracturing the silence as desperation surged within me. I didn't. In response, a cold wind whirled overhead, the shadows congealing to form a shape that echoed my every thought and fear. "Your guilt will only tighten the chains," the figure hissed, becoming a wraith-like reflection of my inner turmoil. "You are part of this continuum now, and it demands something in return." Suddenly, the ground quaked violently, a rumble as if the very foundation of this wretched place threatened to collapse. The air grew thick with anticipation, the children's distress rising to a fever pitch until it reached a breaking point. "Please. Choose." They cried, their cries syncing with the rhythm of my racing heart. The room pulsated, a living entity reshaping itself as though gauging my hesitation, creeping closer with tendrils of darkness, squeezing the very moisture from my breath. Then, I realized I was being tested. Each scream and plea wove a narrative, intricately connected to my unresolved anguish. This disturbing tableau reflected my own psyche laid bare, my choices amplified and distorted. "Time is short," the twisted figure taunted, its grin widening. "The light is fading, and soon the shadows will consume them." Desperation slipped my mind into an unyielding spiral of terror, and I could feel the pressure mounting, crushing solidarity amongst the children who began to disperse into shades. The whispers howled, insatiable and incessant. I would soon be left with nothing, no choice, no Alex, no past. As I stood at the precipice of choice, teetering over the void, an explosion of memories cracked and surged like a dying sun. Darkness clawed at the edges of my consciousness. In that fleeting moment of clarity, when all seemed lost, a single child stepped forth, a girl, a flicker of gold in the murky chaos, her gaze piercing through my confusion. "Help me," she purred softly, her voice different, more vibrant than the rest. "You don't have to be alone." That I felt my heart stutter. Certainty seized me in a warm embrace as all the light seemed to spiral down to that very child, the pulse of hope echoing through the chamber. But, before I could touch that brilliant spark of potential, the room shuddered violently, and in that instant, the weight of my decision crystallized into choice. The floor splintered wide open beneath my feet, revealing a churning abyss. Laughter cascaded like waves crashing against those flailing around me. The last thing I heard before plummeting into the void was the girl's voice, now a haunting whisper laced with fatality: "Don't leave me, don't leave us, you can't." And then darkness swallowed me whole, alive with whispering shadows, carrying the echoes of those I would never abandon, or would I? The void enveloped me, crushing and suffocating, a space without dimension or light. Time lost all meaning, stretching endlessly as I tumbled through a dark abyss. Fear clawed at my insides, mingling with the dissolve of my thoughts, leaving fragments of memory flickering like dying embers. I could still hear the weakened cries of the children, fading into nothingness, replaced by the laughter of that accursed figure as it coiled around me in the darkness. And then, as if I had burst through the very skin of reality, I found myself lying flat on a cold, damp surface, the taste of ash on my lips. Panic surged in my chest as I struggled to rise, the shadows swirling like a storm overhead. I was back in the chamber, but it was different, transformed. The walls pulsed with a grotesque rhythm, revealing fleeting glimmers of scenes that twisted my heart into knots. I was confronted by distorted images of Olivia, her laughter, her bright smile now twisted into horror, her face fading in and out, flickering like a damaged film reel. She stood in darkness, a mirror to the depths of my guilt. "You left me," she seemed to say, the sweetness of her voice now an accusation. "You didn't choose me, Olivia." I cried out, pain piercing through my chest like shards of glass. Emotion tied me there, dragging me closer into the web of memories that ensnared me once more. I reached for her, but each time I stretched out my hand, she vanished like smoke blown away by a cruel wind. The oppressive laughter returned, ricocheting off the walls and soaking into my bones. The figure stepped deeper into the light, unraveling the shadows that had clung to it like a shroud. "Each thread you weave in this tapestry is a reminder of your failure," it taunted, eyes swirling with nightmarish colors. "How long will you remain a prisoner of your past?" As it spoke, the air thickened, and the walls cinched tighter, the colors bleeding into a suffocating shade of despair. An oppressive heat enveloped me, suffocating the fragments of light that still flickered in my heart, and I saw that the children had returned, faint silhouettes drifting among the ever-deepening shadows. Stranded in an eternal twilight, their forms twisted and drawn into grotesque shapes, voices whispering in harmony that chilled my core. "I can save you." I shouted, my voice so frail it felt swallowed by the gluttonous darkness. "I will. Just tell me what to do, sacrifice what you value most," the figure growled, its grin widening. "What weighs heaviest upon your soul?" The children swirled around me like a tempest, eyes hollow and desperate. They reached for me, their expressions morphing between pleading and accusation. I was engulfed in emotional chaos, teetering at the edge of calamity. This was not just about them anymore. This was about me. "Tell me what I must give." I screamed, knowing inherently that I was the monster lurking in this tale. The laughter converged into a din, each echo wrapping around me like a serpent constricting its prey. The shadow figure receded, leaving me glaring into a mirror of my own making. In the reflection, I saw not just Olivia but snippets of a life unsaid. Every moment I had turned my back on love, a family, a promise. Each failure hung heavy on my soul, begging for release. The images morphed, and I gasped as they morphed into visions of Alex's reassuring smile morphing into a curse that threatened to eclipse everything I held dear. "You chose your guilt over me," his voice drifted through like a mournful whisper. "You left me, just like the others. No. Alex," I staggered, the truth clawing at my tongue. "I didn't mean to." The shadows writhed around me as tendrils of despair closed in, choking off rational thought. The cacophony crescendoed, overwhelming my senses as memories enveloped me, forcing me to watch every moment slip through my fingers like grains of sand. I could feel something tightening around my heart, a risk too great, a leap into the unknowable. I sensed the children's cries melding into a sonic boom, vibrating through the floor beneath me, a plea for liberation, for someone. "To break this cycle of torment, would you sacrifice them?" The figure whispered, its voice velvety and smooth. "Save them from a fate worse than death, or would you plunge deeper into your own spiral?" The floor trembled with feverish energy, fractals of time collapsing and realigning before my eyes as horror settled into my bones. I was robustly pulled in different directions, the weight of invisible hands clutching at my limbs. "Choose." A chorus of voices shouted, rising to a crescendo, threatening to rupture my very being. And as the walls crashed inward, the children intertwined with my thoughts, their hopes spiraling into a chain that held me hostage. In that cyclical whirlpool of dread, I stood agonized, trembling where the impossible choice circled like a predator. And then it happened, a fissure opened beneath me, a swirling abyss that seemed to implore me to leap. Suddenly, out from that relentless darkness, the flickering image of the girl emerged, anew vibrant and full of life but slowly fading into despair. "You can't abandon us. You know the truth," she cried, her voice trembling against the cacophony that threatened to swallow me whole. Caught between realms of reality and despair, one thing became achingly clear: whatever decision I made would echo throughout the fabric of existence, shattering everything. In that moment, the abyss summoned me, and with one last trembling breath, the strands of hope and despair collided. I stepped forward, my choice hanging in the balance. There was nowhere else to go but into the darkness, where I would either find salvation or damnation. But before I could embrace the void, the shadows swelled in a final surge, swallowing both the children and the twisted figure, leaving me hovering on the precipice of fate, part of me yearning to leap into the darkness, while another part clung desperately to the fading echoes of maybes and what-ifs. Then, in an instant, the laughter morphed into a haunting, all-consuming scream that enveloped me in a spherical void, echoing my fractured heart's truth, "You must choose now," and I knew, as my body faltered and the darkness closed in, here was only one thing left to relinquish. I find myself standing in the center of chaos, the vibrant shadows swirling around me like a tempest of despair, pulling me deeper into an abyss I had inadvertently created. The children's cries blend with the ghastly laughter of the figure that has haunted me throughout this nightmarish ordeal, its presence a constant reminder of the price I must pay. In this swirling void, the weight of decisions looms larger than ever, pressing against my chest like an iron vice. Am I, too, merely a pawn in this grotesque game? The voices grow louder, weaving through me with an electric urgency, urging me to confront the terrible truth that now strains against the edge of my conscious thought. This was not just about Olivia or the fleeting figures of lost children, it was about me, my guilt, and the darkness that had festered within my soul ever since I pushed them away. Suddenly, the shadows crackle with recognition, and I see her, a flicker of light amid the encroaching darkness. Olivia. The name escapes my lips like a prayer, a plea to save what little vestige of humanity remains. I didn't mean to abandon you. I just stop. Her voice cuts through the tumult, sharp and resonant. Your guilt has kept us all trapped. You can't find peace until you forgive yourself. The message reverberates within me, each word a dagger stabbing at the core of my being. I realized then, through all my fears and missteps, there had been one constant thread: me refusal to face the truth, to absolve myself of the choices that led our paths to entwine with darkness. The children surround me, shadows stretching against the pulsating backdrop of despair, their hollow faces now twisted in anguish. And yet, within that suffering, I see a shimmer of hope, a flicker of memories that bind us beyond the pain. I have to choose, I whisper, breath spiraling into the icy air. Choose the light, Olivia urges, her essence a radiant glow amid the shadows, or be consumed by the darkness. My heart quakes with trepidation. If I surrender to that darkness, will it swallow me whole? I could relinquish my fears, but with what price? The mere thought sends waves of nausea coursing through my veins. Meanwhile, the shadows seem to close in tighter, and the chorus of children grows frantic, reaching out, pulling me towards some unknown decision. That I will save you. I scream, echoing their desperation, as tears dampen the raw skin of my cheeks. But how? What must I do? And then the vicious figure emerges once more, its grin dark and wicked, a mirror of my own inner turmoil. You must feed your guilt, child, it coaxes, each word draped in silk but laced with venom. Relinquish your clean slate for their freedom. It's a simple exchange. I feel my entire world crash, entangled between the allure of their salvation and the remnants of my past, which claw at my throat like maleficent fingers. A sudden clarity whisks through the chaos: this game is relentless. To find peace, I must realize the cost of holding on. Let them go. I scream, ripping away the fabric of fear that weaves itself around my heart. I won't let my sin determine their future. The thought unearths something buried deep within me, knowledge whispered through the churning shadows. They thrive on the fear of loss. Release me. I roar, a fierceness igniting within me, tearing apart the constraints that embedded themselves in my core. I choose to live. I choose to remember. The shadows writhe as my resolution solidifies, morphing into tendrils that now reach for me with desperate, clawing fingers. The specters pause, eyes wide with realization echoing through the darkness. Red-hot energy engulfs me, blurring the line between light and dark, as I cry out once more, let the darkness have my pain. In that instant, I feel reality collide. The shadows surge, absorbing the weight of my guilt as though a storm clouds my vision. The figure screeches in rage, suddenly undone by the force of my choice. No. You cannot sever the pact. And then the laughter explodes into silence, the wind howls as I'm swallowed into a blinding light, a searing warmth that envelopes and consumes the darkness within me. The children's cries transform into laughter, their forms shifting from shapeless spirits to vibrant reflections of joy amidst this newfound freedom. As I drift through the light, the image of Olivia remains before me, a comforting embrace. "You've done it," she whispers, her face radiant, "you've set us free." But as I find my feet on solid ground, I suddenly realize the threads of darkness still linger, each shadow, each whispered confession, still campaigns within the confines of my mind. I am free of their torment, yet the past remains a haunting echo, forever entwined with my soul. Not everything is solved, is it? I murmur uneasily, the world around vibrating with mismatched colors, now vibrant yet marred. Yet amidst it all, I feel the pinprick of darkness, an unrelenting reminder of what was sacrificed, and just as the last vestiges of light begin to dim, a voice echoing the familiar laughter murmurs in the dark, "You may have won this battle, dear child, but the game has only just begun. Can you play with the shadows still lurking within?" The chilling resonance echoes around me like a distant flaring sunset, a promise of horrors yet to come. Maybe this isn't an ending at all, perhaps just a gateway to a far deeper darkness. After all, the voice drifts softly, "we are always waiting outside your window."